Kerkorian flew his plane directly into a wall of ice at 20,000 feet over the North Atlantic, with fuel enough for 1,400 miles and 800 miles of black ocean still ahead of him. Either he made it to Scotland or he became another name read at a memorial for men who simply disappeared. He was 25 years old, had an 8th grade education, and was earning $1,000 a flight because the RAF needed someone willing to take the route no one else would touch. The family that produced Kerkorian had already survived one impossible situation before he was born. His Armenian parents fled present-day Turkey during the genocide, crossing continents before landing in Fresno, California, where Kirk was born on June 6, 1917, the youngest of 4 children. Armenian was his first language. He learned English in the streets. His father had been a prosperous farmer, but the Great Depression stripped that away entirely, and the family relocated to Los Angeles with little to show for it. Kirk hauled produce in a truck for his father, while other kids attended school. He dropped out in 8th grade, not gradually drifting away, but leaving with a purpose, even if that purpose was just survival. Without formal education, he turned to the one arena that rewarded physical discipline over credentials: boxing. Under the guidance of his older brother Nish, Kirk trained obsessively at gyms across Los Angeles, developing the right cross that would earn him the nickname Rifle Right Kerkorian. He went on to win the Pacific Amateur Welterweight Championship, compiling 33 wins in 37 bouts without ever being knocked out. Boxing taught him something specific: how to take punishment and stay standing, how to read an opponent's rhythm, how to wait for the right moment before committing everything. He would use every one of those lessons for the next 70 decades, just in a different arena. But what happened next would redirect every instinct he had built in the boxing ring and aim them at the sky. In 1939, a friend named Ted O'Flaherty, a Navy pilot and crew leader at the Andrews Heating Company where Kirk installed gas wall heaters, finally convinced him to ride along in a small plane over Los Angeles. The city below him spread out in a grid of lights and movement, and something in Kirk locked onto it with the same single-mindedness he had brought to every jab and hook in his fighting career. He was hooked from the first 5 minutes. He quit thinking about boxing and started thinking about altitude. He struck a deal with Pancho Barnes, a pioneer aviator who ran the Happy Bottom Riding Club near Muroc Field in the Mojave Desert. Kirk would milk her cattle and look after her livestock every morning in exchange for flying lessons in the afternoon. He earned his commercial pilot certificate in 6 months, faster than most full-time students. By 1941, he was training other commercial pilots. Then, the war changed everything, and Kerkorian found himself facing the most dangerous regular assignment in the entire Allied air operation. Here is where Kerkorian's method became unstoppable. First, he chose danger deliberately, because danger paid more and attracted less competition. The RAF Ferry Command needed civilian pilots to fly Canadian-built de Havilland Mosquito bombers across the North Atlantic to Scotland. The Mosquito's fuel tank held enough fuel for 1,400 miles. The direct route across the ocean was 2,200 miles. The math was catastrophic, and every experienced pilot knew it. The standard route went north through Labrador, Greenland, and Iceland, which was longer but offered emergency landing options. Kirk took the direct Iceland wave route instead, which used jet stream winds to push the plane at speeds approaching jet aircraft. But if the winds shifted or ice built up on the wings, the plane went down into water so cold that survival was measured in minutes. He earned $1,000 per crossing at a time when most workers earned less than $3,000 per year. Second, he used the same calculation before every flight: study the weather patterns obsessively, assess the variables others refused to quantify, then commit fully without hesitation. He watched how the Iceland wind winds behaved across the seasons, noting which atmospheric conditions produced the reliable tailwind and which produced the lethal headwinds that starved the plane's range. While other pilots waited for perfect conditions and lost days on the ground, Kirk identified the acceptable risk windows and flew through them. In May 1944, flying alongside Wing Commander John DeLacy Wooldridge, Kirk crossed the Atlantic in 7 hours and 9 minutes, breaking the previous crossing record. He had turned a survival mission into a competitive event. Third, he reinvested every dollar with the same intensity he applied to the physical act of flying. After each $1,000 run, he saved rather than spent, accumulating wartime wages while his peers in Los Angeles were paying rent on modest apartments and buying new cars. At the end of 2.5 years with RAF Ferry Command, having delivered 33 planes across the Atlantic and flown to 4 continents, he walked away with most of his earnings intact. He used $5,000 of those savings to buy a surplus Cessna and launched himself into commercial aviation before most veterans had even found their first peacetime job. Fourth, he recognized that the real business opportunity was not the thing he was doing, but the thing his customers were trying to reach. His charter airline, Trans-International Airlines, flew gamblers from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. His passengers were wealthy, impatient, and willing to pay premium prices to get to the casinos faster. Kirk watched them spend money in Las Vegas and thought about who was collecting it on the other end. He started studying the casino business the way he had studied Atlantic weather patterns, looking for the variables, the inefficiencies, the leverage points that others dismissed because they seemed obvious. Fifth, he applied a discipline that would define every transaction for the next 50 years. Never invest in a business he did not control. In 1955, he put $50,000 into a roughly 1% stake of the Dunes Hotel. The Dunes was badly mismanaged. Kirk had no operational authority, and he watched his entire investment go to zero. He never repeated that mistake. When he bought land in Las Vegas, he controlled it. When he built hotels, he controlled them. When he acquired MGM, he took working control before the deal was done. This combination was devastating to competitors who assumed an 8th grade dropout would be satisfied with minority stakes and boardroom invitations. They were still thinking about what to offer him, while Kirk was already deciding what to take. And that's when everything accelerated past the point of easy description. By 1968, Trans-International Airlines had grown from a $60,000 acquisition into a company Transamerica Corporation paid $104 million to acquire. Kirk was now the largest individual shareholder in Transamerica. He turned that position immediately into a war chest aimed at the biggest trophy in entertainment, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. He began buying MGM stock in 1969, fighting off Seagram's Edgar Bronfman in a proxy battle that Hollywood assumed Kirk would lose. He won working control of MGM by the end of that year, then used the MGM brand to do what he had always planned, put it on the side of the biggest hotel in Las Vegas. But the 1969 recession arrived like a hard counterpunch he had not seen coming. His holding company, International Leisure Corporation, had stock worth $180 million at the start of 1970. The recession collapsed it. The Securities and Exchange Commission then blocked a secondary stock offering that could have stabilized his position because the Flamingo Hotel, one of International Leisure's properties, had a history of mob involvement before Kirk acquired it. He was caught between regulators and falling markets simultaneously, and within a year, he was forced to sell half his International Leisure holdings for just $16.5 million. A portfolio that had been worth $180 million had been reduced to a fraction of its value. The man who had flown through North Atlantic ice was now drowning in paper losses in Los Angeles. If that wasn't enough, the original MGM Grand Hotel, his monument to the Las Vegas mega resort concept, opened July 5, 1973, at 26 stories and 2,084 rooms, the largest hotel in the world, became the site of the worst disaster in Las Vegas history. On November 21, 1980, an electrical fire started in a restaurant on the casino level. The flames and toxic smoke moved through the building's ventilation system faster than guests could respond. When it was over, 85 people were dead and more than 700 were injured. Kirk Kerkorian was in New York working on a potential acquisition of Columbia Pictures when the call came through. He flew back immediately. He was personally devastated. The hotel that represented his vision, proof that Las Vegas could think big, had just produced the city's largest mass casualty event, and his name was on the building. What he did next stunned the industry and established the pattern the rest of his life would follow. He did not retreat. He did not sell the MGM brand name in shame. He rebuilt. The hotel reopened in just 8 months. He then continued building, and in 1986 he sold the MGM Grand properties in Las Vegas and Reno to Bally for $594 million, while retaining the rights to the MGM name itself. That same year, he sold MGM UA to Ted Turner for $1.5 billion, only to buy it back months later at a steep discount when Turner's debts made him desperate. Kirk had sold high and bought low in the same calendar year on the same company he had been orchestrating for over a decade. The vindication arrived in layers, each one larger than the last. The 1993 MGM Grand opened with 5,005 rooms and a $1 billion construction cost, again the world's largest hotel. Kirk had sold his private plane and his personal yacht to fund the first international hotel in 1969. By 1993, he was building at a scale that required 9 figures of capital, and he did it with no partner's permission required. In early 2000, at the age of 82, Kirk bought Steve Wynn's entire Mirage Resorts portfolio, the Mirage, Bellagio, and Treasure Island, for $4.4 billion, making him the undisputed dominant force on the Las Vegas Strip. He soon controlled more than half of all hotel rooms in Las Vegas. In 2005, he sold MGM the studio to a Sony-led consortium. He had bought and sold the same studio 3 times and made money on every transaction. At his peak in 2008, Kirk Kerkorian's net worth reached an estimated $16 billion, placing him among the 40 wealthiest people on Earth. The farm boy who had lost his family's land in the Depression, who dropped out before high school, who milked cattle at dawn for the right to practice landings in the afternoon, and who flew a fuel-starved plane over the most dangerous ocean crossing in World War II, had built one of the largest private entertainment and hospitality empires in American history. He drove himself to appointments in a Mercury station wagon and refused free passes to his own MGM theaters, standing in line with everyone else and paying for his ticket. He gave over $1 billion to Armenian causes through his Lindsay Foundation, rebuilding infrastructure and schools in a country his parents had fled under threat of extermination. Armenia named him a national hero. He died on June 15, 2015, at the age of 98 in Beverly Hills. His estate of roughly $2 billion was left primarily to charity. The man who had earned $1,000 per Atlantic crossing and banked every dollar had spent his final decades giving away a fortune built on the principle he learned at 25,000 feet over the North Atlantic, that the route everyone else considers too dangerous is often exactly the one worth flying, because the ones willing to fly it get to the destination first, and they get to keep everything the others left behind.